Hey guys, in today's video, going to be talking about a Democratic primary poll that just came out over this past week. This was taken from February 4th to February 10th of 2019. This is pretty much the gold standard of Democratic primary polls, given the fact that nearly 12,000 registered voters participated, and it has a margin of error of plus or minus only about 1 percentage point. So really good numbers that we're getting here, and it continues to paint this picture that we've been seeing where Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders have separated themselves a bit from the rest of the pack, and a lot of those candidates that are just below Biden and Sanders don't have quite the same level of name recognition, and given the crowded field that we have, it's just going to be tough for them to try to separate themselves, get their message out there, and try to peel away enough support to try to push their way into that top tier. So in terms of the numbers that we have nationally, Joe Biden at 29%, Bernie Sanders at 22%, Kamala Harris at 13%, Elizabeth Warren at 8%, Beto O'Rourke at 7%, Cory Booker at 5%, and then we get a little bit lower from there. I'd probably cut off right about there and go to another lower tier down where we have Amy Klobuchar, Michael Bloomberg, Sherrod Brown, Julian Castro, Kirsten Gillibrand, Tulsi Gabbard, Steve Bullock, Eric Holder, John Hickenlooper, Jay Inslee, Pete Buttigieg, Terry McAuliffe, and John Delaney. And poor John Delaney coming in last place here, even though he announced very early on and had his name in the ring here forever, but that really has not helped him as he's dead last in this polling result. So then we go over and take a look at the early primary and caucus states of Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. And Joe Biden actually ticks up a little bit here, up to 33% compared to his national numbers, which are at 29%. So if Biden does run, he is doing quite well in these early states. Bernie Sanders at a similar place here, about 21%. Kamala Harris just slightly worse in these early states at 11%. Elizabeth Warren actually doing a little bit better in the early states compared to her national numbers at 10%. And then we have Cory Booker at 6%, Beto O'Rourke at 5%, and then just a trace number of percentages after that. And what I find really interesting is when we go to who is your second choice if your top choice, for instance, wouldn't be running. And this is where things get really positive, particularly for Bernie Sanders. So if Joe Biden doesn't run, the second choice amongst Biden voters are clearly with Bernie Sanders at 23%, then Kamala Harris at 15%, Elizabeth Warren at 9%. And the same thing can be said about Biden if Bernie Sanders doesn't run, which I would be more surprised if Bernie didn't run compared to Biden. But Bernie Sanders' second choice would be Biden at 26%. So if Sanders didn't run, that would continue to help favor Biden and push him way out in front. So we have a situation here where the top two candidates have not declared if they're running. If Biden doesn't run, it would be very beneficial to Sanders and push him way out in front, and vice versa. If Sanders didn't run, it would help Biden in a similar fashion. Now we go over to Kamala Harris. She's actually the only candidate whose second choice is not Bernie Sanders. And actually, Kamala Harris voters don't have Bernie Sanders anywhere on their radar because their second choice is Joe Biden, their third choice is Beto O'Rourke, and their fourth choice is Cory Booker. So I would assume that a lot of Harris supporters are very entrenched Democratic Party establishment types, Hillary Clinton backers, for instance, that don't have much of an appetite for Bernie Sanders, and that appears to be where a lot of her support is coming from. Of course, we know that Kamala Harris is running, and amongst all of the candidates that have announced, she is doing the best right now at 13 percentage points. And Elizabeth Warren, if she at some point drops out because she's not doing well, that would instantly help Bernie Sanders, who is getting 25% compared to Harris at 14% and Biden at 13%. But Warren also a candidate that has declared that she is going to be running. But then we have Beto O'Rourke, who has also not decided whether he's running or not. And if he doesn't run, the second choice for his voters are also Bernie Sanders, but not quite as high of a percent there at 20% compared to Biden at 18%, Kamala Harris at 14%. So if O'Rourke didn't run, it would help a little bit there, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, to continue to help push their numbers up overall. So you can paint kind of a positive picture in some sense for each of these candidates that are in the top five. I'll just go through those positive scenarios. Biden being in first place, he already has a very positive situation going on, but the second place candidate hasn't announced yet, and if Sanders didn't run, it would greatly help Biden. And then Sanders, you can make a really strong case for him here. If Biden doesn't run, that makes him the clear front runner. He's already in second place with a clear separation from the rest of the pack, but there's also a number of other candidates that if they dropped out, their support at least based on the numbers that we're seeing, would help Bernie Sanders overall. Kamala Harris, she's in first place amongst the candidates that have announced, so if Biden and Sanders didn't run, that would clearly put her in the front runner position at this point in time. Also, Elizabeth Warren, if Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden didn't run, that would help her in terms of some of that Bernie Sanders vote going over to her. But we'll see how all that plays out. And again, Beto O'Rourke not announcing at this point in time, but I would also kind of be surprised if O'Rourke didn't announce that he is running in 2020. His other path could be potentially running for the Senate again in the state of Texas, this time going against John Cornyn instead of Ted Cruz. We'll see where his political future takes him, but clearly in 2018, a guy that did a lot of impressive things in terms of getting a lot of grassroots support behind his candidacy. Now, if we go down to the demographics here, it's just really interesting to see the average age of supporters amongst these top 5 candidates. Not a huge surprise here to see Biden at the oldest age target here with 52 years old. Sanders, by far and away, the youngest age of support here. And that's why Sanders is such a major threat. Having that young grassroots support behind your candidacy can really be very beneficial. Also, these models tend to, in general, for a primary and caucus, you're not going to get as high of a turnout amongst younger voters as older voters. So if he's able to get a surge model going amongst those voters that are in the lower brackets, that can really benefit him in terms of outperforming what the polls are indicating as his current second place status. But then we have Kamala Harris, also a relative older age demographic here at 51. Elizabeth Warren at 49, and then Beto O'Rourke at 47. And this is why Bernie Sanders backers would say that they do not want Beto O'Rourke to run, because he's going to be dipping in a little bit to those younger voters as well that are just so committed behind Sanders' campaign that peeling off some of those votes over to O'Rourke would certainly hurt Bernie's chances in the long run. But that's what we're seeing in terms of the average age demographics. We look at the under 30 years old voters in a Democratic primary or caucus, and Bernie Sanders absolutely killing it here. First place at 44%. Second place, Beto O'Rourke at 28%. Warren at 26%. And then Biden at 19%. And Kamala Harris rounding out the top 5 at 18 percentage points. But then we get to the over 65. These are going to be your retirees, those that get their news primarily from MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. And not a huge surprise to see these people not have the greatest view of Bernie Sanders. He's in last place here at just 12%. First place is Biden at 30%. Then Kamala Harris at 25%, Elizabeth Warren at 24%, Beto O'Rourke at 20%. So a huge generational divide in how Democratic voters are splitting off and supporting different candidates, which is really interesting to see. So that's pretty much going to wrap up this video, guys, going through all this great data that we got here from the Morning Consult. If you're interested in looking at all of this data for yourself, I'll have a link to it down in the video description. You can subscribe for more, and I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.